Hi, I'm Martin Jarvis, and once again I want to welcome you to another perspective. There's a lot going on in the world today, and our nation is smack dab in the middle of it. And we need to be very careful how far we allow ourselves to go down this maze of an immoral rabbit hole. It might be too late, because there is this thing called karma. Scriptures call it, you reap what you sow. Chickens coming home to roost. What goes around comes around. I think we've lost our moral compass. We've looked at political parties like they're our favorite NFL teams that have to win. And even if we see a bad call, or if we see someone cheating, or a deflate gate, or whatever the case, as long as our team wins, we don't care. And that's how we've seen with politics. And we see the consequences, life and death situations where people die, often en masse. We look at it like a PlayStation graphic or video. We don't really see the reality. We've become desensitized. And I think this is a very critical place for us to be able to step back and recognize, there's something going wrong. We look at our lives, those people that are successful, those people that have made the right moves, gotten good grades in high school, went to college, got a good job, raised a family, or maybe didn't go to college, went to work for a factory or, a company, and motor company or whatever, and raised a family, made the right moves, raised their kids. Kids went off to college or whatever they did, went to military, just did all the right things. That was the American dream. The American dream has always been that you could be, great, that you could be successful. You could take advantages of the opportunities before you, make all the right moves, keep your nose clean, don't break the law, just do the right thing. And you'll be all right, you'll be successful. That was the American dream. That's the allure that brings people to this nation, immigrants from other nations, legal or illegal immigrants. That is the allure, because America always held this, was the beacon of light, just shining this opportunity to acquire the American dream. The American dream was built on honesty and hard work and morality and self-sacrifice. And somewhere along the way, we've lost that. Okay? We've lost that, man. I mean, if we really sit back and we step outside of ourselves and look at ourselves and try to examine what's been going on in our nation, what kind of things we've applauded, what kind of things our leaders are doing, where our military members are being placed, and the decisions that have been made, this is not who we are. But it like snuck upon us. It's like every morning, you get up in the morning, as say you were in the 3rd grade, and you look in the mirror, okay, every day when you get up and brush your teeth, comb your hair, and every day of the 3rd grade, of the 4th grade, of the 5th grade. By the time you get to be in the 11th grade, although you're no longer a 3rd grader, you didn't see the changes, you didn't see the evolution of who you became. Why? Because you looked at yourself every day, and the changes were oh so slight. And they were you, but you didn't see it. And I guarantee you go back in your photo album and you look at a picture of yourself in the 3rd grade, and then look at a picture of yourself in the 11th or 12th grade. It's drastic, tremendous changes, but you didn't see those changes all along the way, because they're ever so slight, ever so deceiving in a sense. You missed it. Talk about, you boil a frog, you put a frog in some water and start boiling it. The frog won't jump out. He will just die. But if you try to throw him in some hot water, he's going to try to jump out. So it's that increasing environmental changes, so slow it doesn't recognize it. And sometimes we just have to be able to step outside of ourselves. I used to tell the kids at juvenile detention, I was there for 17 years, every week, talking to those kids, trying to motivate those kids out of the condition of their lives. I missed 4 weeks in 17 years. And I would speak to them, maybe I'd speak to them maybe for 20 or 30 minutes, in an auditorium. And it would seem like I'd have to take the first 15 minutes to try to convince them that there was something wrong with their lives. Now, to most of us, regular folks like us, it should have been obvious. I mean, come on, they were incarcerated. They were locked up. They were being led into the gymnasium in little orange jumpsuits and forced to sit down in folding chairs right before me. They should have known, but they didn't. Sometimes they'd laugh, sometimes they'd chuckle, because they thought they had it going on and I was the square. Because they couldn't see the reality of their lives, because this was all that they knew. And so what I'm saying today is that America, we've come into a place where we've celebrated murder. We've celebrated mass murder. We've celebrated genocide. And I'm not really picking on one particular side necessarily, because whatever side we're against, we want that side to lose and this side to win. We don't mind the killing. Now I look at this situation with Iran, and I'm like, I don't think we should really be there. This is my personal opinion. And so, but I can't, root against my own nation, because I don't want American soldiers to die, but I don't want Iranians to die either. I don't want Israelis to die, but I don't want Palestinians to die. There is a morality that we have lost. We have chosen sides, drawn line in the sand. And we don't care who on the other side dies, as long as our guys are okay. That's a problem. That's not who we're supposed to be. We even during World War II, as treacherous as that war was, and the enemies that we combated with, there was a Geneva Convention. There was a particular way you treated prisoners of war. Today we don't care. There were rules of engagement. There were things called war crimes. And the Nuremberg trials is what created, even in the United States of America, to begin to teach its soldiers that you had a responsibility to disobey laws, orders that were illegal. People don't see that today. It's like just do whatever you're told. And maybe they're not old enough to remember the My Lai massacre in Vietnam with Lieutenant Calley and so many others. And there were situations in Iraq as well, where civilians were just cut down, innocent civilians. We even had a semblance of morality even in recent history, because Iraq wasn't all that long ago. But somehow today, nuke them. We don't have any problem. Genocide, oh well. Now, in our defense, the politicians, I believe, have always been corrupt. We got a glimpse of that with President Nixon. I remember that. I was a young person. I remember all that stuff you went through. It was amazing to watch. But see, with the news media, and then with cable, and then with the ability to hear 24/7 what's going on in the world, we got a bigger and closer picture of what was actually going on with our politicians. And I don't know, for me, I think as I've been observing, even the political realm, the political parties, I voted both Democrat and Republican. I remember once I voted for Reagan, once. But it was like back then we were looking at people and we were thinking, was this guy good or was he not good? And so even if your political party lost, it was like, oh well, we're going to try to win next time. Things have changed. I think the things changed with Obama. A lot of people say that it was because of Obama the country got messed up. And a lot of people, especially white folks, especially Republican white folks, will say, Obama was the divider. It was because of him we're in this mess. And, I think they're right. I think before Obama, folks were comfortable in their racism, in the way they viewed other races outside of white folks. And so they had friends. They all had friends, black friends. I had black friends in high school, black friends, in the military. I always had black friends because the environment was comfortable, because there was a line that was never crossed. But when Obama became president, that line was crossed. You see, and I don't really blame white people necessarily. Okay, I try to understand. We have to understand. We just can't just be mad, at them and them just mad at us, because there's no resolution in that. But what I see with white people was that they had a tremendous advantage. and they blew it. It's as simple as that. But they didn't have to work that hard, because they were born with an advantage in this nation. They were white. And I don't mean an inherent physical or mental advantage. I just mean the society was structured in such a way that simply being born white in this nation, society looked at you in a better way. And so even after the civil rights movement, and after everybody could drink out of the same drinking fountain and use the same bathrooms and go to the same restaurants and all, there was still that residual leftover, superiority, at least comfort in being glad that you weren't like that black guy, or that you weren't that black guy, okay? Even to the point where a lot of black people kind of resent the fact that they were black people. And, but when Obama became president, it's like all that stuff changed. And people began to find themselves feeling second-class citizens. That's why you have this attitude, that many white people have, that white people are being mistreated. White people aren't being mistreated. It may be mistreated in the sense that now they're being treated like everybody else was, or the black guy was, and they recognize there's no difference between anybody. And so I'm just saying that's the issue on that side. And then you have the issue on the black side, you just being still being angry, still being mad, because of the history of this nation, because of the attitude of white people. So we have an unresolved conflict of negativity toward each other. And we don't even realize while we're fighting each other, our nation is falling down this giant sinkhole to our destruction. Everybody else sees it. All the other nations see it. They recognize what's going on. Now don't get me wrong, they've had their issues too, and some of them still have their issues. And maybe it's because, they didn't have a black president yet. Maybe because Britain, they might have gone through some same craziness. Maybe France as well. It's easy to look at the United States and condemn the United States and wonder how we got here, but they haven't been through what we went through. This is like a trying time for folks in this nation. When Obama became president, it was a trying time for white people. It was trauma. But it was a different kind of trauma for black people as well, because it was something we didn't think had happened. It was kind of a trauma for us in a sense, but almost a trauma in the relief of the generational trauma that black people had in this nation. But I'm just saying, whatever the issues are with black people and white people and everybody else in this nation, we need to wise up. Because we are rolling down this big hill. I see it almost like we're on the top of the hill and we've been rolling down and picking up speed, and picking up more mass as we're rolling down this hill. And it feels kind of good. We're moving kind of fast and nothing seems to be getting in our way. But there is the base. There is the ground level. And we're going to hit that. And I'm just suggesting that we have to find a way to step outside of ourselves and look at our nation and look at the stuff we've bought into. We bought into criminality and applauded it. We've bought into stuff that the Nuremberg trials after World War II, we had German leaders that were executed for doing some similar things that we are a part of today. And what goes around does come around. I saw this coming even during the Iraq War, when our president and the Attorney General were trying to reframe the definition of torture to enhanced interrogation, right? No, torture, right? And we don't understand. Folks didn't understand. Well, if we could avoid another 9/11, if we could avoid this, avoid that, maybe it's worth it. But the problem is the message that you're sending to your potential future adversaries. That if this is what you're going to do, they might as well do it too. And see, this is what we as Americans need to embrace. That there's they say there's nothing for free. Well, there's nothing for free. It comes back to you. Look. I have this particular theory, and I think you might agree. We have a lot of laws in this nation to protect from bullying, to protect from discrimination, to protect from assault, to protect from all kinds of things that folks could be victimized by. And for a long time, and for many of us, we do think that, well, these laws are for the weak. These laws are to protect those people that can't protect themselves, and so we need to have these laws. And what I'm thinking is, it's just the opposite. See, for me, I don't. If you look back, I'm going down a rabbit hole here myself. If you look back in the Wild West, okay, and you look at a lot of the quick draws, the gunslingers, the killers, like Billy the Kid, right? Those guys. And you take a look at what he actually looked like. He wasn't a big John Wayne looking guy. He was just a kid, goofy looking kid. But he could shoot. and that was his claim to fame. And so what I'm suggesting today is these laws aren't simply to protect the innocent, to protect the weak. They're there to protect society from anarchy. Because if I bully this little guy so much and he believes he can't go to the law and expect the law and justice to step in and handle his business, he's going to take the law into his own hands. Okay? And so really we need to recognize that these laws then are not to protect the weak. These laws are to protect the bullies. Because there will be retribution from the person who's picked on if there isn't legal rights, legal weight to be able to handle his oppressor. Okay? He'll take it into his own hands. And that's what we don't want. We don't want anarchy in our society. We don't want everyone believing that they can't trust the law, they can't trust the justice system, so they have to take law into their own hands. Okay? And so what I'm suggesting then is when we look at the rules like of the Geneva Convention, and we look at even this idea of not committing war crimes or how we treat our prisoners, we have to recognize that the positive for us is that when our people are taken prisoner, they will be treated with justice as well. Okay, so this is the balance. But when we put ourselves in a position, even as a nation, to say, forget the laws. I don't care about it. I'm going to do whatever I want. You call it piracy, whatever. If it works, it works. No, we can't have that attitude. Now, see, the problem is that we have had this attitude within our nation. Okay, since Obama became president, and then after he was, no longer president, then Trump, and then Biden, and then Trump, and all this stuff, we've had this vitriol in this nation. And often the vitriol leads to violence. And if you talk to the politicians on either side, they're inundated with death threats to themselves and to their families. And some of them have been killed. And some of their family members have been attacked. Because this is where we go. Okay? Because we have simply lost ourselves. And justified our responses. And they're just not right. And the reality is that there is going to be an end. There's going to be an end simply because what goes around does come around. Look at all these nations that ignored human rights and committed war crimes. Look at Nazi Germany. What did end up happening to that nation? Look at Italy with Mussolini, El Duce. What happened to him? Look at all these dictatorships when they, it looked like they were really rolling for a while, but you reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. There is a thing called karma. Nobody gets away with anything. And we have lost ourselves in this. We have justified our actions, our inhumanities to human beings. We see kids and children and babies dying in mass, 10,000, 20,000 people. And we don't lose sleep over it. Turn the channel. There's a new episode of NCIS Sydney coming on, And then there is a raping. What I'm suggesting today is even as being a student of history, you recognize that all these nations that once thought they were there, they are no more, or at least that government. and I'm afraid we're at that particular point today. You can't applaud evil. You can't applaud war crimes. You can't applaud piracy. You can't applaud genocide or mass murder. I mean, there was Nero. Historically, there have been all kinds of crazy people that found their ways, in leadership of nations and took those nations down to destruction. And so I'm just saying we have to be careful. The destruction then, I don't even think it's like the leader's fault. I think it's the people's fault for being so gullible. Maybe needing to be led, wanting a hero, wanting someone, but you have to be careful what you want. I look at Nazi Germany, and we've seen the footage while Hitler was in his heyday. I mean, he's out there were thousands upon thousands of people saluting Hitler. But after the war, you couldn't find a Nazi anywhere. Why? Because they knew, and I have to believe they knew while it was happening. They knew there were people suffering. We can't be that way. We can't. We have to be charitable. Charitable is the balance. Because what goes around does come around. Chickens do come home to roost. So as I try to tell folks, just in personal lives, in our personal lives, when things don't seem to be going right, well, we're not perfect human beings, so we do things that aren't quite right sometimes, and we do have to suffer the consequences. So I'm saying if what goes around comes around, then find ways to do as much good as you can, so then the bad as you can will get balanced out as it comes back around, okay? And that's the kind of nation we've been. Even over the hundreds of years, we've always been a charitable nation. We've always given, folks. We've always helped the poor, at least tried to help the widows, and even help other nations who are suffering and starving. And even the immigrants coming into the nation. Come on, they served a viable purpose. They handled jobs that we didn't want to do, that the American population didn't want to do. They handled those jobs, and they got paid. So the jobs got to be taken care of. The fruits got to be picked. The lands got to be farmed. They got to be, so our benefit was there. Their benefit was their families were fed, the American dream and all. Everybody was happy. But then you have politicians stepping in here and trying to find a one-up on their opponent, so try to cater to a particular passion within the population to help them get elected. And if it's not a passion that's already there, to create that passion within them. Even if you have to create what's called a straw man, create something that doesn't really exist, but make it the enemy. Like they're eating our dogs and cats. Come on, now we knew they weren't eating dogs and cats, but it was something to grasp onto, because we were in this blood in the water type thing. We were like circling like sharks, and we were. When you look at the animal kingdom like that, like the sharks, first there's a scent of blood. Okay, but then they go into this, when there's enough blood in there, they go into this uncontrollable frenzy that they even lose their minds for a while, because it just affects them so. And so I'm just saying we found ourselves in that way with blood in the water in this nation. And see, what we've done is we've relegated to this nation. The politicians have been fighting each other. We've picked our sides, and we've been mean. We've been, name-calling each other and the groups, and maybe killing folks within the groups. But all of this has been contained within our nation. And so there was a bit of constraint there, as far as even allowing it to continue, because it was within the four walls of our nation. It's almost like you have a family that's going kind of crazy, your family, and well, as long as it's in the house and it's not affecting the neighbor next door, we'll just keep this going, and it won't really be that much of an issue to the neighborhood. But what we've done in this particular situation, we've allowed our chaos. We've allowed the political parties that we've picked. We've allowed the attitudes and the heroes to guide us and lead us and influence us, that we've taken our little family fight out into the neighborhood, and the neighborhood isn't crazy. They're not accepting it. They're not participating. And somebody look at the neighbor. Jeez, Man, I like that yard over there. How come they got that and we don't have that? Well, I'm going to go there and take that because I'm stronger than they are. This is what we do. And then we call our buddies up. I thought we were cool. Aren't you going to help me? No. That's not right. We don't want to listen. There's going to be ramifications. What goes around always comes around. We need to know that. We need to understand that. And I think the first step is to just recognize how far we've gone. This isn't who we are. We're not murderers. We're not genocidal maniacs. We're not heartless. We weren't. But somewhere along the way, within the past 10, 15 years or so, we've allowed other folks who might be heartless, who might not care about other people, we've allowed them to affect us. We shouldn't. This isn't an NFL team where we just pick sides and we don't care how we win. This isn't a PlayStation game where the casualties that we're watching and experiencing aren't real. These are real. These are real people, real people's lives. And I'm suggesting that we are culpable. And there are two worst part is what goes around does come around. We're not going to get away with this. We know this. Before we were involved in this, how were we raised by our parents? Weren't we given to understand that we should be good to people? We should be nice to people? There should be a civility about us. Even taught us how to speak to adults and people who are older than us. We were taught good manners. We were taught civility. But somewhere along the way, we've lost it. And we just become like those frenzied sharks with blood in the water, just lost our minds, not even remembering who we are. We have to remember who we are. Our children are watching us. What's interesting is our children kind of already know, hopefully, that we've been off and they're not going to follow in our footsteps. Some of them are. But what goes around always comes around. What are we setting up our children for? See, a lot of these political leaders that might be leading us down this terrible place of having to reap some serious consequences, they're so old they'll probably be dead, and we'll be the ones. Well, I'll be 68 this year. But some of y'all will be the ones having to deal with the fallout. And if not us, our kids. What are we setting our kids up for? To reap, I think there's some kind of biblical scripture, kind of paraphrasing and not quite right maybe, but like the sins of the parents will fall on the children, up to like the third generation or something. This is what we're talking about. You reap what you sow, and we can sow so much negativity that it might take 3 generations of reaping before it's had its run. So I'm just saying we need to check ourselves. I talked the other day, this isn't a religious program, but we kind of call ourselves a Christian nation. And most of us are aware of the 10 Commandments, at least we've seen the movie, right? What I'm saying is, like take some of the 10 Commandments, man. Most of our laws are built off of, or are influenced by the 10 Commandments. And so some of them, about 5 of them, 4 or 5 of them, are just, express how we are to respond to each other as human beings. Don't kill. Don't steal. Don't want someone else has. Don't lie. Don't take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, which means don't do terrible stuff and say, God told me to do it. And, if we just take those 5, don't kill, don't steal, don't want what someone else has, don't lie, and don't say you're doing it in the name of God. And that would satisfy everything. You can't be the bully simply because you're stronger and think you're justified in making other people do what they do. You remember in high school the bullies? Now we do this. We act like we're all that, but you remember the bullies in high school. Most kids were not bullies. It's sort of like, but we don't realize that. It kind of reminds me of you go to a kid's football game or a kid's baseball game. You see the parents out there pushing their kids. Those parents know good and well they weren't half as good as their kids were, but they're trying to live their failures vicariously through the success of their children, acting like they were all that. Sort of like military people. Now look, I'm military, ex-military. My family, my dad, me, my 4 siblings, we did 100 years of service. My dad was World War II, Korea, Vietnam, 2 brothers, Vietnam. My sister was a medic in Desert Storm, and me and another brother, fortunate enough, we were in peacetime, okay? So just to understand, you know, I love the military, okay? Not too thrilled about our civilian leadership sometime, but I love the military. But the reality is this, that you know, you see like the Vietnam veterans, you know, all this stuff, you know, and you know, most veterans did not see combat. Most military people don't see combat. Whether it was Iran, whether it was Iraq, whether it was Afghanistan, whatever the situation is, the high 80 to 90% of military people never see combat. But they're going to walk around now with these hats on, with the flags and hat on backwards and all this stuff, like they were in the mix. And so nothing against them, because when you sign up for the military, you say, wherever you need me, I'll go. So if you didn't have to go, you still made yourself available, unlike some people that we know, right? But what I'm suggesting is, too often we try to come off like we are what we are not. And all it takes sometimes is just to look in the mirror, quiet, by yourself, and just ask yourself, is this the right way that I'm supposed to be responding? And I'm suggesting is that our nation is in a place right now where we need to be looking in that mirror. We need to be asking ourselves, have I been on the right track? Don't be so entrenched in your politics, in your hero worship, or even in this false bravado like you may have been something in the military that you really weren't. Come on now. We got to be real. We have too much to lose. This nation has been around. We haven't been around that long. But we want to be around a lot longer. We do reap what we sow. We have to be careful. If not for us, for our kids' sake, for our nation's sake.